Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today we'll be diving into why the label Christian Taliban utterly and absolutely fails as an insult. Like, you should not be offended by this. This is really just, they're calling us the Christian Taliban because Nazi went out of style for a moment. But they'll be back to calling us Nazis later on. So let's just get rolling in with it. The context for this has to do with the Texas heartbeat bill going into law. So they called us the Christian Taliban because we want to take away a woman's right to kill, to murder her own child. That warrants being called a Christian Taliban. So let's just dive into my 3 reasons why this utterly fails as an insult. Number 1, the Taliban were a worthy adversary. In war, you can definitely have respect for your opponents. Not all your opponents are utterly terrible at war. In this case, the Taliban were not only talented at fighting, but they also accomplished their objectives. They won in Afghanistan in a very short period of time. So with that said, you don't really use the people who won a war as an insult to use against someone else. We don't call people Viet Cong in the United States because the Viet Cong ultimately won. It makes no sense to do that. You know, we have other labels for people who lose a war, like Nazi is certainly one. But, you know, we don't call people who won like they're winners. So with that said, you know, Islam and the West have been going at it for several centuries. And Islam has always been a worthy adversary from a military and geopolitical perspective. So let's be real. This is not we call them goat humpers and stuff like that, but at the same time, they won and they're more capable as an adversary than we give them credit for often enough. So this moves me on to reason number 2. The Taliban have justification for their actions and tactics. You know, from an Islamic perspective, from a purely Islamic perspective, the Taliban is just Sunni Islam being Sunni Islam. They are just Muslims being Muslims over there. They are operating within an Islamic worldview and have complete justification within that worldview to purge the secularism that the United States tried to import out of their country. Furthermore, from a more absolute perspective, from a biblical perspective, I believe that much of their actions were justified. They viewed themselves as being invaded by a foreign power and therefore had the justification to defend their homeland. From their perspective, they had justification for going to war against the United States and certainly the government in Afghanistan that we set up there. So they had the justification to do that. And when it comes to, you know, their enemies, they have the justification to kill the people that they view as enemies because that's what you do in war. You kill people that are your enemies. It doesn't always matter whether they are wielding a weapon or not. That's not how war works. These are just modern conventions that we add on to war. We've always known that in war it is not just armies that fight, it's nations. It's economies that fight in wars. That's why you firebomb Dresden. That's why you firebomb Tokyo. These are things that you do in war because these are about accomplishing objectives and defeating your enemy. So the Taliban had the justification, not only from a purely Islamic perspective, but they also had a justification for their actions from a biblical perspective as well. And this moves me on to point number 3. And point number 3 is where we need to be mature about this. We should recognize that the similarities between Christian evangelicals in the United States and Taliban Muslims in Afghanistan are really few and far between. I mean, we can count on one finger how many similarities there really are. Both don't want women to dress like whores. Well, that's number 1. Both aren't really supportive of abortion. That's number 2. because Muslims actually aren't as pro-abortion as much of the West is. And then the whole homosexuality, transgenderism thing, the Taliban isn't into all that. And just to bring up a point that I brought up in a few videos ago, us flying a gay flag celebrating homosexuality and transgenderism over the Kabul and United States Embassy in Afghanistan, that did way more to recruit Taliban fighters than any civilian casualties. Let's be real. That's how Islam works. That's how the Taliban recruits. They show you what the West looks like and how much it differs with their beliefs, specifically on these few and far between issues. Number 3, on the few and far between, I think we just covered with the whole homosexuality and transvestite thing. So number 4, and this is a bit of a stretch, they're pretty pro-gun. They wield AK-47s. And, in my opinion, the AK-47 is, one of the best rifles in the world. I believe it's better than the American counterpart. My opinion on that. You can feel free to disagree, but they're not exactly pro-gun for everyone, whereas Christian evangelicals actually are. So this is really only a half agreement, because reports are that they're gun confiscating in Afghanistan. But the image of them wielding AK-47s bears similarity to the caricature of evangelicals in the United States, but that's really only half of a similarity. As far as the other similarities go, the form of government, very different. They believe in a strict theocracy, whereas Christian evangelicals really don't believe in a strict theocracy. There are those who believe in a theonomy, and there are those who do not believe in a theonomy, but neither one actually believe in a state-run church. Neither one actually believe in the church running the state in an overt capacity, but in a people who go to church running the state capacity, they certainly do believe in that. So again, we're just dispelling some ignorant notions that are commonplace in our society. And, if they call you the Christian Taliban, who cares? Who cares? One of my operating mantras is, it's a choice to be offended by something. It is a choice to take offense to something. Therefore, if you're offended by the notion of being called a Christian Taliban because you are punishing the other side, the leftists, the commies, by banning abortion in Texas, specifically with the heartbeat bill, they lost. They're the losers in that situation. And they're calling you a Christian Taliban because they're butthurt. Don't take insult, rub it in their face. They're the losers in this situation. And recognize the W, and don't get pissed off and butthurt when they call you mean names. And, I just gave 3 reasons why the insult really fails as an insult. So comment below if you have any more. Again, my name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well. And don't forget to like the video, because that helps with the magical YouTube algorithms, because this video totally won't be that monetizable, that's for sure. And if you really want to support the Evangelical Dark Web, go to evangelicaldarkweb.org/join, and you become a subscriber there as well. Have a blessed day, and I'll catch you on the next one.